everyone, TV Shores here. It is May the 28th, 2015. I'm sorry I haven't had a video up in a few days. I've had a lot of unexpected obstacles pop up that have hindered me getting things done as I would like to. But I want to pick back up here with this Oculus, this new structure that we talked about in the last video concerning the eye and the World Trade Center. We noticed before in previous videos how we talked about the Oculus as we see the 300 eyes laid out in the walls throughout the subway system there. And then that glass mosaic tile floor, that the center point of the floor is the Oculus, the eye, and out from it we see the world. Okay, we can see they've carried into the new construction this ongoing issue with the Oculus. Now, in the last video we touched on a bit about the interior of it, but we didn't really look at it. But see how I was speaking of these store. It's like going to be a retail area within it. And of course you can see, let me show you a little more. Of course, there's our exterior. See how it's laid out. How, if in the future they so desired, it could be easily made into one magnificent office building. Now, the key thing here is to remember the importance about what's going on with this eye, this Oculus. Now, we had discussed, see this right here? This is like the wedge that some information we looked at. Let me see if I can find it right quick. Talked about a wedge of light. Here it is. Speaks of how the design called for the Oculus space to be left open, forming a wedge of light so that the sun rays around the autumnal equinox would hit the World Trade Center footprints each September. And then down here at the bottom it talks about how the Oculus will be at an angle to maximize the effect of the autumnal equinox rays. Well, I don't really know. I've just got so much going through my head. I don't really know where to go at this point, but just bear with me. As far as the autumnal equinox is concerned, we'll get back to that in a minute. I want us to focus on this for another minute or two. How that we see the new construction at the World Trade Center is continuing this Oculus theme. It was underneath in the subway system and now is being brought out in the open, okay? The Lord had shown me that things underground mean things that are hidden. There's a hidden agenda with all this, and I don't think, I'm sorry if I messed up the volume on that. Anyway, I don't think that it would seem a coincidence to anyone that to call this Oculus and continue the theme from the subway system and all the bizarre things we saw there with the 300 eyes and the tile wall and such. To call this Oculus but still want to describe it as something else in appearance is just a prime example of how Satan works in trying to make us think one thing when it's actually something else. It's all about how they assume that we are so ignorant, okay? It's all about hidden agendas and things being not what they seem to be. Okay, I want to draw our attention back to right here and what all we learned about the eye And it goes far beyond what I've got here, okay? It goes all the way back to ancient Egypt and Osiris and the Eye of Horus and so many things I have yet to be able to work into the videos. The Lord wants me focused on this modern day theme of the Oculus and what Satan has done, and bringing out what we see in the modern day infrastructure around us, and with what's going on concerning CERN and the World Trade Center. See, even after the World Trade Center 9/11 occurred, they continued on with this Oculus thing. Of course, we see the evidence of that right here. There is a hidden agenda here. It is all about, well, let's go down here and look at this. This is some notes I had made about the new construction at the World Trade Center. And we see here that at the World Trade Center complex, we see that the new tower, began as what was called the Freedom Tower. All right, let's look at what that means. Freedom means liberation from slavery or restraint or from the power of another. And tower means exalting or high place. So to call it the Freedom Tower, it would mean that it represented exalting liberation, exalting freedom, and proclaiming that we are not in slavery or restraint or in the power of another. Well, we know that the title Freedom Tower did not stick. We know that they changed it to what is now known as the One World Trade Center. Now, what we understand there is one means that's just it. It's one. It stands alone. Okay? World means global. And as I looked it up, it means whole of human civilization. That's what the word world represents. Okay? And trade is to make an exchange of one thing for another. And center, we know, means it's the heart of, or the core of, or most essential part of. It can be also known as the control center, the head of, or the hub that networks out. And we've seen that word hub come up again and again in videos when I would be looking up information. And I know that the Lord, when He first brought this to me back in 2012, He gave me the word hub. That the World Trade Center was the hub, the catalyst by which Satan had used to draw the nations into fornication, spiritual fornication, the lust after the dollar and all that it could bring. But we see here that the Freedom Tower quickly went from Freedom Tower to One World Trade Center, which is about global, being the hub of global trade. And trade, it says to make an exchange of one thing for another. And when you look at what that means, to make an exchange of one thing for another, you know, and you look at it beyond what we know it to initially mean, it initially means what we would think is buying or selling. But to exchange one thing for another in the viewpoint of the New World Order, exchange your freedom for global control. Okay? I think we need to understand they could not keep Freedom Tower as the name because it was quite the opposite of what is coming, which is all about the New World Order and a world control of 3 different areas: government control, financial control, and religious control. Okay, or spiritual, however you want to look at that. A few other things I want to point out is when we look over here at where it talks about the autumnal equinox. We spoke of that. Let's see. Right here. It talks about, let me back this off where I can see. The Oculus space was to be left open, forming a wedge of light so that the sun's rays of the autumnal equinox would hit the World Trade Center footprints in each September. And then we come down to the bottom and it says intended. Oh, wait a minute. I'm at the wrong place. The Oculus will be at an angle to maximize the effect of the autumnal equinox. Okay. Let's look at the autumnal equinox for a minute. The autumnal equinox falls on September 23rd, 2015. It just hit me like a V8 moment just a little bit ago about how this falls on Yom Kippur. Okay, there's a video that I would like to introduce to you. And if you've not already watched this, go look this up. I have not watched it in its entirety, but there is some information in the early part of it that really grabbed my attention. It has to do with 1776, which we know as the founding year of our country being established, the birth of the United States. And it is also the height of the new One World Trade Center. I believe you will find what is within this video very interesting. Let me just give you a little bit. I'm going to pick it up right here.
And forget about the Adobe 7 Alex Jones crowd. They're giving you all that fantastic flash shiny stuff to play with. It's all surface layer noise. And start looking into September 23rd, 2015 information. Because that's when the tribulation begins.
Okay, he said
if you're a preacher,
that is when the tribulation begins.
All right.
Okay, so for those of us who understand, who have come to understand how God's feast work, you know, there are a lot of people who are saying the rapture occurs September 23rd, 2015, or thereabout. And what we have to understand is that when we look at and understand God's feast days, his harvest days particularly, the harvest days represent God's mercy and how God will, those who are not ready, he is going to bring them into that readiness, those who are willing. But it's going to come after some events occur that is really going to shake people up. My point in bringing this up is I do feel that September 23rd is very significant. I do feel it's very likely that is the beginning of the tribulation period. But what we have to understand is as these harvests have to play out, they will begin before that time. And no, we can't know the exact moment, but we can know that we are in that season. God had told many of us about, and this goes back to understanding Passover. Once we understand that Passover, in the first Passover we saw, like I mentioned before, the blood covering of the lamb, so that the destroyer would pass over and not enter in. That is what is about to take place. And there are some things I have to point out about this eye and the occult and how it connects to CERN and Shiva, that and what they think that they are going to be able to do as far as controlling people and bringing about this delusion. It all connects in. But we have to understand, yes, it is very possible and very likely that the tribulation begins in September, very likely on Yom Kippur. But these harvests must begin before then. We've been looking at days and counting days. We can see that God's word is clearly telling us there is a process of him bringing his people out of this world. And I'm going to cut this video right here, but we will get into some of these other issues concerning this Shiva, the destroyer, the god of that is known as the destroyer, and how this all connects. It's good to keep in mind that there are so many avenues to be covered with what the Lord has been given me to bring forth about the World Trade Center and the eye. I just simply can't cover it all. But what I'm trying to do, again, I say, is connect these dots so we can see how this is all connected and where it's going. This is about the destroyer. This is about the destroyer. This is about control. There's so many things connected to all this, and it's intertwined. And God just wants everyone to be aware of that, so we are not in the dark about it. Okay? I love y'all. Bye-bye.